Well, hello again. My name is Paul Engel. We are at the Constitution Study, and we are here to read and study the Constitution so that we know what our rights are, so we can defend them, and we can teach the rising generation to be free. Most importantly, what we're trying to do is return the Constitution to we the people of the United States. We may read it, we may know it, and we will learn the power we actually have, the authority we have, the legal opportunity we have to regain control of our government, and hopefully a power that we will eventually enact, use, find useful. I'm glad you could join me here today. If you are new to this, if this is your first foray, I hope you give it a try. I hope you'll listen to this episode and maybe go find a couple of others on the website, constitutionstudy.com. See what we're talking about here. The idea that we should actually, as citizens, know what the supreme law of the land is, know how our federal government is supposed to work, and begin holding them accountable when they don't. Again, the website has lots of information, other podcasts, other writings. You can sign up for the mailing list and get notified of any updates of what's going on. And it's a good place to get started. If you're returning, I'm glad you're here. I love the fact that I'm seeing more and more. I track the downloads, and I love to see more and more people getting engaged and listening to what's going on. And I'm actually going to ask you to do more. Well, I'm very glad that you're here. Don't just listen to the podcast. I mean, if that's all you want to do, that's fine. I'm not going to force you to do more, but I would hope you'd actually go to the website and engage. Maybe comment on some of these episodes. Maybe post a question. My last episode dealt with a question that a listener had. She sent it in, and it turned into it was a very good question, turned into a great article on the website, turned into a great episode on the podcast. I hope you'll enjoy it and go check it out. It's episode 25, Does In God We Trust Violate the Separation of Church and State? So again, you can head over to the website. I'm going to ask you, if you've been here before, do a little more. I'm really going to ask you to sign up for the mailing list. Right now, there's not much going on, but I got a few things in the works that I'm hopefully will start announcing as far as other things we'll be doing for the Constitution Study, possibly speaking engagements. I've got a gentleman here that's got a couple of ideas he may want me to go speak at in the next couple of months. I live in the Middle Tennessee area. If you live in that area and would like me to come speak to a group, ask on the website. If you don't live in that area and you still want me to come speak to your group, we'll see what we can arrange. Ask at the website. We'll see what's going on. I'm asking you to be engaged because this is more than just a way for me to spend my time. I am afraid for the country that we are leaving my daughter, and I'm afraid for the country that we're leaving your sons and daughters, and I really want us to start clawing back some of what we lost over the last decades. So again, thank you. Consider heading not only to the website, you can find me on Facebook. I have a channel on YouTube. You can even go over to Patreon. I'm trying to get this up and going, and I've been doing it on my own, and I'm looking for people that will come alongside. And if you can help financially, that is great. If you want to go to my author page on Amazon, amazon.com/author/Paul Engel, and buy one of the booklets, that's great. If you sign up for the mailing list, you'll get a free copy of one of those essays, whatever is currently available. Right now, it's reading the Declaration. We go through the Declaration of Independence and try to understand why we created this new nation. So again, I'm glad you could be here. I'm looking for people that will come along and help. And if you have any ideas, please go to the website and ask. I'm always looking not just for questions, but ideas. If you thought of something I haven't, I would appreciate a few minutes of your time to head over to the website and ask. So today, we're going to take a look at something interesting. We're going to take a look at the General Welfare Clause. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution reads, "The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States." Now, there are several phrases in the Constitution that are regularly misrepresented. One of the most common is Congress's power to provide for the, quote, general welfare of the United States. So let's break down that phrase and see if we can understand it a little better. Now, general means public, common, relating or comprehending the whole community, as in the general interest of safety of a nation. So general it's common, it's everything. Welfare is the exemption from an unusual evil or calamity, the enjoyment of peace and prosperity, or the ordinary blessings of society and civil government applied to the states. So the general welfare clause, general welfare when applied to the states, means the exemption from unusual evil or calamity and the enjoyment of peace, prosperity, and blessings of society for the community as a whole. The next logical question should be, what community? See, notice the Constitution doesn't say the general welfare of the people of the United States or the general welfare of the states, but of the United States. You see, today we think of the United States as a nation broken into 50 subdivisions we call states. But when the Constitution was ratified, we had 13 independent states who joined together and delegated some of their powers to a central government called the United States. Now, this distinction may seem trivial, but it's actually quite important. You see, if the United States is a single government subdivided into smaller units we call states, then Washington rules, and your states are really colonies of Washington, not much different than their condition back in 1776 under British rule. However, if we are 50 sovereign states who have delegated some of their power to the Union, and if the term United States refers to the Union and its central government, then the meaning of the phrase Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States means something very different. You see, it means that Congress can collect taxes to pay debts of the federal government, not those of the states. It means Congress can collect taxes to pay for the defense of the nation as a whole, not the defense of individual states. Most importantly, it means Congress can collect taxes to pay for the general welfare of the United States, not the people or the individual states. See, I know this is not what we've been taught, and you may be thinking I'm pulling this out of thin air. Actually, I looked at the words of James Madison, known as the father of the Constitution, when he was debating the Cod Fisheries Bill in the House of Representatives in February 1792. You see, the bill in question included a provision for the central government to provide bounties to cod fishermen as a way to encourage people to join the profession. During the debate on February 3rd, Mr. Giles said, quote, "The present section of the bill," he continued, "appears to contain a direct bounty on occupations, and if that be its object, it is the first attempt as yet made by this government to exercise such authority. And its constitutionality struck him in a doubtful point of view. For in no part of the Constitution could he, in express terms, find a power given to Congress to grant bounties on occupations. The power is neither directly granted, nor, by any reasonable construction that he could give, annexed to any other specified in the Constitution." See, no one, not even those who supported the bill, could come up with any reasonable way of showing that the Constitution gave Congress this power. Later, on February 7th, Mr. Madison went into a detailed explanation of why the common defense and general welfare clauses could not be used to justify Congress having power to spend money in that way. Quote, "It is to be recollected that the terms common defense and general welfare, as here used, are not novel terms, first introduced in this Constitution. They are terms familiar in their construction and well known to the people of America. They are repeatedly found in the old Articles of Confederation where, although they are susceptible of a great latitude as can be given them in the context here, it was never supposed or pretended that they conveyed any such power as now assigned to them. On the contrary, it was always considered clear and certain that the old Congress was limited to the enumerated powers and that the enumeration limited and explained the general terms. In short, never before had it even been considered that Congress would have the power to collect taxes to be used for anything it thought was good or for the general welfare. Mr. Madison went on to describe the dangers of granting Congress such power. Quote, "If Congress can employ money indefinitely to the general welfare and are the sole and supreme judges of the general welfare, they may take care of religion into their own hands. They may appoint teachers in every state, county, and parish and pay them out of the public treasury. They may take into their own hands the education of children, establishing in like manner schools throughout the Union. They may assume the provision of the poor. They may undertake the regulation of all roads other than post roads. In short, everything, from the highest object of state legislation down to the most minute object of police, would be thrown under the power of Congress. For every object I have mentioned would admit of the application of money and might be called, if Congress pleased, provision for the general welfare." Close quote. You see, Mr. Madison recognized that if Congress had the power to determine what is and is not for the general welfare of the United States, then every portion of your life would be under the control of Congress. Guess what? We see that today. Congress has inserted itself into education, traffic laws, even state and local law enforcement. And while I didn't mention religion as Mr. Madison has, it is only because Congress has abdicated their responsibility to oversee the courts, who have taken care to arbitrate religious views. Because Congress routinely delegates their power to the executive and judicial branches, now we live in a nation where literally everything is a federal case. Continuing on Mr. Madison's debate, quote, "In short, without going further into the subject, which I should not have here touched at all but for the reasons already mentioned, I venture to declare it as my opinion that were the power of Congress to be established in the latitude contended for, it would subvert the very foundations and transmute the very nature of a limited government established by the people of America, and what inferences might be drawn or consequences ensue from such a step is incumbent on all of us to consider." Close quote. Mr. Madison was right. As we've seen through history, Congress's appetite for control over the citizenry has grown without limit or restraint. The very idea that there are limitations on the federal government is all but heresy in today's political and judicial environments. No limitation exists on Congress but what the Supreme Court bothers to decree, and the role of the states is no longer even considered. I wish previous generations had bothered to consider the consequences of giving Congress power beyond their constitutional boundaries, and can only encourage that we today not only consider them, but begin enforcing those boundaries again. You see, the General Welfare Clause, as we've seen, has been used to everything. Healthcare, mortgages, housing, school. Congress and the federal government are in everything because we have let Congress determine what the general welfare is that they can spend our money on. See, this is what happens when previous generations and when we don't take seriously our responsibility to hold our elected officials accountable. If we want to rein in government, if we want to remove power from Washington, we need to rein in this concept that anything Congress thinks is good is constitutional. It is not. In fact, the Supremacy Clause says the Constitution, treaties, and laws created pursuant to the Constitution are the supreme law of the land. What that means is not, well, they were made by the rules, or in the order that the Constitution says, but they are made within the limits of what the Constitution sets. The General Welfare Clause has been abused, and they use the Supremacy Clause to say these unconstitutional, these illegal laws. And I use that term now rarely. If it is unconstitutional, it is illegal. Those illegal laws are then forced on us because they say, well, our laws are supreme. No, they're not. The Constitution is supreme. And until we recognize that, and until we go back to our representatives in Washington and say, listen, if you will not uphold your oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, you are not qualified for that office, and we remove them, we will continue to watch Washington take over this nation. We will continue to be colonies of an out-of-control federal government. And we'll continue to have our rights subjugated, infringed upon, denied, and destroyed. And ultimately, when we hand this country over to our children and their children, the mess that it is in will not be Washington's fault. It won't be the politicians' fault. It'll be our fault because we didn't do our job. And I hope that made you think. I hope that made you stop and think about your responsibility as a citizen of the United States. Not just to vote, but to vote wisely. Not just to vote for whoever sounds best or offers the most goodies, but for whoever will uphold the Constitution. I hope that this encouraged you to learn more about how we're supposed to be in charge of our government. How we, the people, are the ones that formed this nation through our states. And it's time for us to take control, because right now we're on a ride where no one's in control, and it's becoming a mess. So I hope, again, head over to the website, Constitution Study. Tell me what you thought. Ask some questions. Consider supporting the work that I do. Sign up for the mailing list. And most of all, come back here so I can see you next time at the Constitution Study.